Peace died in 2 shots. White Bird Canyon, 1877. A civilian's gunfire on a Nez Perce truce party unleashed chaos. Warriors, hidden in the brush, struck back with deadly precision. This wasn't just a costly clash, it was the moment the Nez Perce War began. The Nez Perce War didn't start with a bang, but with a slow burn of broken promises. Years of land theft and cultural missteps by settlers and the U.S. government pushed the Nez Perce to the edge. By June 1877, tensions in Idaho's White Bird Canyon snapped into open conflict. The Nez Perce, led by Chief Joseph and White Bird, had their lodges pitched along White Bird Creek, a quiet signal of defiance. They weren't just camping, they were preparing for a fight they hoped to avoid. Meanwhile, General Oliver Howard, stationed at Fort Lapwai, reacted fast. He sent Captain David Perry with 106 troopers from the 1st Cavalry, Companies F and H, to quash the unrest. Most of these men were green, with barely a third having faced combat against native warriors. Perry's force wasn't alone. 11 civilian volunteers, eager for action, and 13 Nez Perce scouts from treaty bands joined the march. These scouts, recruited from reservation bands, were meant to bridge the gap between the Army and the non-treaty Nez Perce. Howard also called for reinforcements from Fort Walla Walla and the Wallowa Valley, but they'd take time to arrive. Perry's orders were clear. Contain the Nez Perce, protect Grangeville's settlers, and use the scouts to negotiate with Chief Joseph and White Bird. The goal was to convince the chiefs to surrender warriors who'd recently attacked settlers. Simple, right? Not quite. Grangeville was a powder keg. The townsfolk demanded blood, not talks. Perry, caught between orders and local pressure, weighed his options. The civilians and volunteers pushed hard for an attack, fearing the Nez Perce would slip away before reinforcements arrived. Perry caved. After 10 p.m., his force marched south toward White Bird Canyon. By midnight, they reached the crest of White Bird Hill, dismounted, and tried to rest. One soldier, too wired to sleep, lit his pipe and heard a howl sharp, unnatural, no coyote. It was a Nez Perce scout signal. The Nez Perce had eyes on Perry from the start. Their scouts tracked every step since Fort Lapwai. As the soldiers settled on the hill, word reached the Nez Perce camp 4 miles away. The Blue Coats were here. Chief Joseph, his brother Olocott, and other leaders still held out for peace but planned for war. About 130 warriors were in the camp, though heavy drinking the night before left only 70 ready to fight by dawn. Their weapons were a mix: modern repeaters, breech loaders, old muskets, and traditional bows. The Nez Perce strategy was sharp. 6 warriors carried a white flag ready to parley, positioned behind a hill. Others, under Olocott, 2 Moons, and Yellow Wolf, hid behind ridges and in brush along the creek, poised to strike if talks failed. Their goal wasn't just to fight, it was to delay the army long enough for elders and boys to gather the horse herd and for women and children to escape. Every warrior was stripped for combat, ready to protect their people at all costs. Dawn broke on the 17th of June, 1877, and Captain Perry led his 106 cavalrymen, 11 volunteers, and 13 scouts down into White Bird Canyon. His plan balanced peace and war. Remove overcoats, load carbines, and stay ready. His line stretched nearly 200 yards across the rough terrain. 8 troopers under Lieutenant Edward Theller rode ahead, ordered to spot Nez Perce and hold fire unless attacked. As they neared the camp, Theller sent word back. The Nez Perce were in sight. Then it all unraveled. Civilian volunteer Arthur Chapman galloped forward to get a look. 6 Nez Perce warriors emerged, carrying a white flag for peace. Chapman, startled or reckless, fired 2 shots at them and bolted back. That moment killed any chance of negotiation. The peace party scrambled for cover, and Nez Perce warriors along the creek and cemetery ridge opened fire to protect them. The clash had begun, and it wasn't going to stop. The Nez Perce fought as individuals, not a rigid unit, led by their band leaders. No single commander called the shots, but their skill was undeniable. A horse-based people, they preferred mounted combat but were deadly on foot, using cover like ghosts in the canyon. Their first targets were officers and trumpeters to sow chaos. Trumpeter Jones fell fast, his horn silenced. The warriors' fire was precise, exploiting every mistake the army made. Perry, still hundreds of yards back, heard the shots and saw Theller's advance guard form a skirmish line on the ridge. He ordered Company F into a line, pistols drawn, planning a charge. Meanwhile, Volunteer George Shearer led his men in a reckless dash around a low rocky hill toward Whitebird Creek. It was a disaster. 2 Moons and Yellow Wolf's warriors countered effortlessly, wounding 2 volunteers. The civilians' line collapsed, and they retreated to the soldiers. The Nez Perce seized the moment. Warriors under 2 Moons and Yellow Wolf swarmed the hill the volunteers abandoned, turning it into a stronghold. Perry's men, now facing fire from concealed positions along the creek and cemetery ridge, were exposed. The Nez Perce didn't need a textbook formation. Their knowledge of the land and fluid tactics outmatched the Army's rigid lines. In minutes, the costly clash tilted decisively in their favor. Captain Perry's company charged toward the ridge, their boots kicking up dust in Whitebird Canyon. His trumpeter, already hit, fumbled his horn, leaving orders muffled. From the ridge's crest, Perry saw the trap. Nez Perce warriors firing from concealed spots along Whitebird Creek and Cemetery Ridge. He chose defense, ordering his men to dismount and fight on foot. The ridge seemed defensible, but scattered rocks and waist-high grass offered little cover. Soldiers stood exposed, silhouettes against the dawn sky. Perry's men formed a skirmish line, trading long-range fire with the Nez Perce. The warriors, hidden in brush and behind hills, picked their shots with care. Perry, sensing danger on his right, galloped to Captain Trimble's H Company, ordering them to deploy right of F Company. Trimble kept his men mounted, expecting a charge. But the Nez Perce struck first. Warriors, led by Olocott, swept around H Company's flank, some clinging to their ponies' sides to dodge bullets. Yellow Wolf later scoffed at tales of wild horses stampeding the line. It was warriors, he said, using their mounts as shields, invisible to soldiers' eyes. Braves like Shore Crossing and Red Moccasin Tops, draped in red blankets, taunted the army with fearless charges. The Nez Perce pressed both flanks, with Yellow Wolf's men seizing the volunteers' abandoned hill. F Company's line buckled under relentless fire, taking 6 to 10 casualties in minutes. Perry ordered a fighting retreat. The army's horses, spooked by gunfire, broke free, scattering across the canyon. Nez Perce warriors targeted them, knowing chaos would follow. Perry's skirmish line crumbled as some soldiers, misreading the fallback order, panicked and fled. The ridge, meant to be a stronghold, became a killing ground. The Nez Perce, with no formal commander, fought like a swarm fluid, relentless, and perfectly in tune with the canyon's terrain. The Army's textbook tactics were no match for this. Perry and a few officers rallied stragglers on the right, linking with H Company. But panic spread like wildfire. Some H Company soldiers, spooked by the Nez Perce flanking, bunched behind the line, abandoning formation. Captain Trimble, desperate to hold the flank, placed Sergeant Michael McCarthy and 6 men on a rocky outcrop overlooking a ravine. It was a strong position, dominating the Nez Perce's path, but it wouldn't hold for long. Perry ordered Trimble to pull H Company back to a better position. McCarthy, focused on the warriors ahead, missed the retreat. His small team became the rear guard by accident, trading shots with Olocott's men for precious minutes. The Nez Perce sensed weakness, sending warriors galloping up the ravine to outflank him. McCarthy, realizing his company was gone, ordered a desperate dash to rejoin them. Only he survived, taking heavy fire. The Army's lines collapsed entirely. Within 45 minutes of the first shot, most soldiers were in full retreat, some on horseback, others sprinting, weapons discarded to lighten their load. Lieutenant Parnell, refusing to break, held a small skirmish line with a handful of men. He found Theller and Chapman, who suggested retaking McCarthy's outcrop. The officers rallied a few dozen soldiers for a charge, but Nez Perce fire from both flanks shattered the effort. Parnell's line fought on, pulling back slowly, but it too collapsed. The retreat became a rout, with soldiers fleeing in disarray. The Nez Perce, relentless, kept up the pressure, exploiting every mistake. Perry and Trimble's hopes of an orderly withdrawal were gone. The canyon, once a place of peace talks, was now a graveyard of ambition. The Army's defeat wasn't just costly, it was a brutal wake-up call for what lay ahead. The retreat splintered into chaos. Captain Perry and Trimble led one group up the west wall of Whitebird Canyon, scrambling along a cattle trail to the high plateau. Lieutenant Parnell's group took the wagon trail, dodging Nez Perce warriors in pursuit. Lieutenant Theller, straying with 7 men into a ravine, faced disaster. Exhausted horses faltered, and Nez Perce warriors encircled them. Theller's hopeless stand, fighting to the last, bought time for others to escape. The main Nez Perce force chased Perry's group up the cattle trail, their hooves thundering through the canyon. Near Whitebird Hill, Parnell's detachment rejoined Perry's, and the officers organized a shaky withdrawal toward Mount Idaho. The Nez Perce halted their pursuit as the soldiers neared settlements, their point made. By 10 a.m., 4 hours after the first shots, Perry and Parnell's exhausted men staggered into Grangeville, finding Trimble and scattered survivors waiting. The cost was brutal. The army lost 34 men with 4 wounded. The Nez Perce? 0 killed, 3 wounded. As soldiers fled, the warriors collected Springfield carbines, Colt revolvers, and civilian firearms left behind, arming themselves for the war ahead. Whitebird Canyon wasn't just a battle, it was the opening salvo of the Nez Perce War, a conflict that reshaped relations between the Nez Perce and the United States forever. Whitebird Canyon, 1877. A peace flag fell, and war rose. The Nez Perce outfought an overconfident army, proving their resolve. History calls it a clash. For the Nez Perce, it was survival. This battle sparked a war that echoes still. Want more untold stories? Subscribe to Histories and Native Tales, hit the bell, and comment your thoughts below.